Warning, this video contains team selection and captain choices which some viewers may find offensive.
Hey guys, and welcome back to FPL TV. My apologies first for no team video last week. I did plan on releasing a video and began writing it on the Thursday, but at that point I had 4 different injury concerns in my side, in Darwin, Rashford, Haaland and Gnonto all yellow flagged. And for that reason there was just so many hypotheticals last week, so much uncertainty that I essentially had no idea what I was going to do. I decided to wait for more updates on the Friday afternoon and at that point simply ran out of time. In fairness, I didn't make any big changes to my team anyway, and the change that I did make was literally moments before the deadline hit due to all that uncertainty of last week. The initial plan was to start Haaland against Liverpool for Gameweek 29, but 3 minutes before the deadline it was then leaked that he wasn't starting. So I was then rushed to make a quick decision, and with one free transfer brought in Brighton's Evan Ferguson for the injured Gnonto. I liked Brighton's double game week the best last week, and considering I had no space for one of their midfielders, I figured I'd take a punt on the youngster instead. Not a bad move, I guess, with the impressive 18-year-old scoring in the second fixture and getting a respectable 7-point return. I would have preferred, of course, upgrading Gnonto here to the likes of Isaac or Watkins, both who have a fixture in blank game week 32, but sadly there wasn't enough money in the bank to do so. The real frustrating part of that mad rush before the deadline, though, was moments after making that transfer, perhaps a minute before the deadline hit, it was then leaked that Bukayo Saka was set to be benched against Leeds. And sadly, unlike some others who were very fast, I wasn't quick enough to react. Saka with therefore a 1-pointer there and agonisingly Tyrone Mings on my bench getting 10. Had I have been able to react in time and have made that switch, that 9 extra points certainly would have been useful, especially considering I had no chips in play last week and needed all the points I could get, but that's just the way it goes. On the face of it, there were some positives to take from Game Week 29. The majority of my players did return, and notably I did make the right captaincy call, opting for the brilliant Matoma, who's been unbelievably consistent this season. The big negative, however, is that all the highly owned players that I didn't own also performed very well. The likes of Kane, Tony, Watkins in particular, as well as there of course being plenty of bench boosts in play, the majority of which scored very heavily. I've spoken a lot in recent game weeks about me being up against the Game Week 26 wildcarders, and there's no doubting that particular template on the bench boost last week did very well. Looking at some of the scores out there, it's fair to say now finally that was certainly a very strong play, so kudos to those on that strategy. With the template team doing excellently last week, what I needed was my double Liverpool pair to really pull their weight as differentials, but that wasn't the case. They only started 1 game each and returned just 10 points between them, not good enough for over 20 million spent. With no European fixtures to be concerned with now, and with an impressive win over United a few game weeks back, I thought they'd turn a corner, but that doesn't look to be the case at all. With me notably having no free hit left, and with Liverpool having a very nice home fixture against Nottingham Forest in blank game week 32, I am inclined to hold on to the pair, Mo Salah in particular. But despite that, selling Darwin is certainly tempting now, especially if he's not a guaranteed starter anymore. So for me and my team, an immensely disappointing score of 94 last week. In the context of the game week, a very poor score, and one of the lowest I've seen in all my mini leagues I'm in, so a tough one to take. Always very much a possibility though, considering I've used my chips earlier in the season, so I was always going to be up against it this week in the biggest double of the season. In fairness, the drop in ranking wasn't monstrous from 230k to 345, but still significant, and enough to make the hopes of a top 100k finish now look a much more difficult prospect. That target of top 100k probably gone now, as well as beating my last season finish of 75k, but who knows. Nailing that triple captaincy chip before the season ends will be pivotal for me. So let's move on to Game Week 30 now, take a look at how my team is lining up and then discuss some potential transfer plans. Looking at the team lineup for Game Week 30, to be honest I can't say it fills me with much optimism, and yet on the other hand I'm not sure there's many moves on offer this week to make it significantly better. In previous weeks when making a longer term plan, I looked at this week as one in which I could potentially roll the free transfer, and I may still do that. Of course, Darwin Núñez down to Ollie Watkins, certainly one move I'm considering for one free transfer, with the informed Watkins facing Forest at home this week. Probably the only option that I'm very concerned about not owning for Game Week 30. However, for me though, this move isn't clear cut and straightforward, as I've per usual got to keep blank Game Week 32 in mind, a week in which I won't have the free hit for, meaning every move I make has to keep that week in consideration. In fairness, Watkins does play in Game Week 32 as well, but so does Darwin Núñez. And if I am to be making transfers, ideally it'd be selling players who aren't playing in that Game Week 32 rather than players that are. Núñez and Liverpool also do have some excellent fixtures coming up, albeit despite their poor form. Where after Arsenal they'll face Leeds, Forest, West Ham, and then notably a double game week in 34 to come. For that reason, as mentioned, I'll certainly be keeping Mo Salah now, but keeping Núñez, although I'm inclined to do so, still very much a question mark. Once again for Game Week 30 though, it's very much going to be a bit of a wait and see for my team, as I look for a bit more information regarding Erling Haaland and more importantly Luke Shaw. The plan initially was to hold Luke Shaw through blank Game Week 32, with good games against Everton and Forest before it, and then a double game week in 34 soon to follow. However, considering that my criteria, as mentioned earlier, is to try and build up on players that will feature in Game Week 32, well, if Luke Shaw is set to miss Everton and Forest in the next 2 games, he could be one to move on with that blank game week on the horizon. In fact, whilst recording this video today, it has now since been confirmed that Luke Shaw will indeed miss this Everton fixture, but the extent of the injury is still not so clear. This week, I've also got respectable cover on my bench in Estupiñán and Gabriel, who granted don't have the best fixtures but are still decent options. Hypothetically, if I were to replace Luke Shaw, then I'd have 6.9 million to find a replacement, and would ideally need a player who features in blank game week 32 and also has a future double game week to come. So based on those 2 parameters, it's only Newcastle and Liverpool that I'd be interested in. With that in mind, the likes of Botman and Fabian Schär are therefore considerations to replace Luke Shaw if needed, with perhaps Fabian Schär my preferred option here. A bit extra money but also the extra attacking threat. As for Liverpool, well, Andy Robertson would be affordable here, and I do really like their fixtures long term. Leeds in 31, Forest in 32, West Ham in 33, then a double in 34. But if I were to go Robertson despite their poor form, well, they've got Arsenal this game week anyway, so there's simply just no need to make that move yet. Going Robertson certainly questionable given their form, but either way that one can wait a week. The same can also be said for Newcastle in fairness. I like Schär as an option, I'm just not sure I need to make the move this week. Brentford away is no easy fixture, and not much better than Estupiñán away to Spurs anyway. So despite the fact that Shaw has now been ruled out against Everton, I may just hold on until next week anyway and see first if he's available for Forest. He'd potentially be a very good option for that week, whilst meanwhile giving me a bit more time to make a longer term decision. Another issue that I'm going to need to fix in my team soon is the fact that for blank game week 32, I currently have no playing goalkeeper, due to the fact that Ward has now lost his place in the Leicester team. It's not a transfer that I need to make this game week, but something that I'm going to need a transfer saved for in the coming weeks. I may also look at the likes of Nick Pope or Alisson in goal from next week, so rolling a transfer this week does keep my options open there. For the captaincy in Game Week 30, just the 2 candidates for me in Haaland and Marcus Rashford. And providing we get some positive news regarding Haaland, it's likely I'm going to leave the armband on him. Once again, as I'm recording this video, Pep has since given a positive update, so fingers crossed he starts. Is it guaranteed that he'll start this fixture? Well, definitely not. But seeing as though there's a decent percentage of teams around me who have since sold Haaland in the last 2 game weeks, and seeing as though some of those will perhaps now be concerned to bring him back in considering he has been a slight injury concern, well, that will, for a change, perhaps make him a bit less owned amongst the active managers than we're used to seeing this season, and perhaps therefore a chance for me to take that risk and give the armband to the most explosive player in the game. Granted, he's still going to no doubt be heavily captained and one of the most popular choices, but considering those circumstances, any potential points for him will certainly have a much bigger impact than they would have had a few weeks back. Given my rank, I think it's worth the risk to hope he starts, and if he does, there's no one I'd trust more with the captaincy. So that's everything regarding my team for Game Week 30. No transfers made yet, and the plan is to wait until the morning of the deadline and try to squeeze out as much information as possible first. I am very keen on rolling the free transfer this week, giving me a bit more flexibility in my planning for Game Week 32. However, if I am to make a move this week, then Darwin to Watkins is certainly a strong consideration, while Shaw out to Fabian Schär the potential defensive switch. Good luck to you all for the upcoming game week, FPL responsibly, and I'll catch you all very soon.